been doing a bit better than the aggro variants today.
Yeah, we'll take a look at how the win percentages shape up. Druid just struggled as a whole, but that's because it's a combined effort from J Druid and Aggro Druid, clocking at 40% win rate today if you take out the 0-3 Paladin performance from Hoy earlier. Outside of that, we also have to see how the specific matchups line up too. We have Tempo Rogue versus J Druid. This is a matchup that should favor Rogue on paper, and I do wonder how this Lich King tech will influence that matchup, if anything at all. Tom probably is going to look for better early game play because Lich King is very late game centered.
Yeah, Lich King is a powerful tool in this kind of matchup. We saw Samuel Sao have a lot of success with his Lich King in his previous match, where he was able to just consolidate power, a number of large minions, and generate value from that Lich King. The 8/8 body is very difficult for Druid to remove once it hits the board.
Ballast Slayer is a much better pickup here for Tom. Now, over on DocPwn's side, I feel like Doc's draws with Druid have been very removal-centric. It always feels like he has early game removal, but no ramp. And he is always kind of barely struggling, as he does have a little bit more of the traditional Jade Druid build with Jade Spirits. Doesn't have some of that new tech that we saw with the Oaken Summons and the Ironwood Golem.
Yeah, that decision will likely hurt him in this matchup, where you'd much rather have the additional armor gain as well as the additional taunt minions. It does make your deck a bit more powerful against control decks, and can certainly help in the mirror match where your Jades can just get bigger than your opponents.
Right. So perhaps against, any kind of late game, like mage decks, for example, that might come into play, but that's not the group that they're facing. All the mage control stuff and all the other interesting shenanigans are happening tomorrow for Group C and D. Outside of that, but I mean, Tom, he's got the one. He's going to be having a much easier time facing against a J Druid has a lot less defenses like that. He picks up the Firefly turn 1 here, and he's kind of weighing his options on how aggressive he wants to be from the get-go, or if he wants to just kind of take his time and play it slow here.
It does choose to go with the Firefly here, wants to hold on to South Sea deckhand for potential charge damage later. I think part of his thought process there was he could play the South Sea deckhand on turn 1, coin out Captain on 2, and really get the pressure on to prevent DocPwn from being able to put up much defense. Here, though, by playing the Firefly, he makes this Wrath from DocPwn pretty awkward, because he certainly doesn't want to expend a full value Wrath on the Firefly, and cycling it doesn't actually even remove the body.
Yep, at the same time, looks like he doesn't have any other good play for turn 3. And I think what matters more than maybe removing this Firefly is having an actual play. So I'm in favor of drawing in this position.
Yeah, gonna go ahead and cycle that Wrath, try and find himself some ramp or just more defensive tools. And Tom's just gonna take it slow. He wants to dagger up here and give himself the ability to not run any additional minions out just yet. And that the cycle did find DocPwn a Wild Growth. Obviously preferred to have cast it last turn, but accelerating his mana is still important.
Oh my goodness, that is it's kind of brutal.
We have seen this happen a lot, where a player chooses to hold on to Pirates and then draws patches almost immediately. And now the South Sea Captain is much less impressive of an option for Tom, because it's just a 3/3 body rather than a 3/3 plus a 2/2 charge.
Well, Tom's not going to slow down anytime soon. He's going to actually start the action right now with he has a 6/6 Van Cleave, and then he has more Pirate synergy coming up on the following turn. And that's a good one, because Doc's doesn't have a deck that's very defensive compared to the other J Druid lists.
Doc does have the interesting option of just doubling up on the branching paths here to power up his Spellstone to 6 damage to kill the Van Cleave, gain him 12 armor, and allow him to take out the most threatening minion on the board. Does end up not using that resource to dig for more cards, but I think in this matchup he mostly just wants to survive, so I don't think he feels too badly about using it that way.
Yep, branching path's going to be able to get double loot the chest. And, you know, with Spreading Plague and Aya, that should give DocPwn some pretty good firepower going into Ultimate Infestation. One of the big questions is how safe can you get to that point? Because Rogue will play around the Ultimate Infestation.
Ooh, another deckhand for Tom. So the Captain plus one of these charging Pirates represents quite a bit of damage, but you know, as you mentioned, it does go wide in the board and leaves him in a position where Spreading Plague is a very good defensive tool.
Now, I gotta say that despite the fact that DocPwn has been largely pegged as an underdog and doesn't dedicate as much time to it, I think he's played pretty well in his first series and leading up into the second series here against Tom. Hopefully he can keep that up. And we got a chance to sit down and talk with Doc about his preparation for Worlds.
So I prepare for Worlds by putting a lot more hours than I usually do. So I've been practicing quite a lot. It felt really good after putting all these hours. I feel more confident about my plays and stuff. Maybe I should have put even more hours, but you know, time, you only have 24 hours in a day, and at some point you gotta cut it out.
That's right. Sometimes you just gotta relax and you know, hope that your preparation was enough. But then you talk to players like Muzzy who plays, you know, 10 to 12, or like Sento said he practiced for 20 hours in one day.
Yeah, that is kind of crazy. 20 hours.
Yeah.
I really think Doc is a great example of, you know, how players who, you know, may not be able to commit themselves full time to Hearthstone can still find opportunity to compete. Not only has he made it this far, he is putting up a really good showing here at the World Championship.
Yeah. And of course, a big shout out to Sidonia, who's been the main practice partner for DocPwn. You may have recognized that name from last year's World Championship and doing well in majors all throughout 2017 and one of the breakout performers from that country. He was the main guy helping Doc throughout all of his preparation.
And now Doc decides to play his Aya here, which is interesting because it does give Tom an opportunity to trade off some of these smaller minions and potentially neutralize some of the power of a Spreading Plague. But Tom doesn't have a Cobalt Scalebane here, which is what he would really love to have. Right. To be able to play Scalebane, he could condense his threats into a couple of large things, which significantly reduces the impact of potential Spreading Plague. But now, we're going to see the Spreading Plague likely come down next turn and make a lot of Scarabs to dull this offense from Tom.
Yeah, Tom does have the Vile Spine to help chew through a big target or maybe even one of those Scarabs. But, I mean, Doc's just going to gain 25 health from the Spreading Plague. Getting closer to getting to that ultimate infestation turn. Tom picks up a big card though in the Bone Mare.
Yeah, Bone Mare is one of the real power cards in Rogue against Jade Druid because you're able to just centralize so much of your threatened individual minions, and because the Druid relies on damage-based removal, those big buffed minions can be difficult for them to deal with if they come down before the Druid is really able to get going with infestation.
This guy's toast.
This should remove a clean amount of Scarabs onto the board here for Tom. Should be able to take out 3 very nicely. Set up for the Bone Mare with a similar spread on the board. You know, we don't really talk about branching paths used for +1 attack Kibler very often, but in this scenario, it's actually looking not too bad if you want to snipe out those Serenite Chain Gangs on board.
Yeah, I love the use of branching paths that way. Doc does have the opportunity to potentially play the Jade Golem as well and get those buffed up, but I think he may be considering wanting to use his hero power this turn to pick off one of the other minions as well. He does decide to go with the Jade Spear here, and yeah, he's going to have a relatively threatening wide board here. He just goes for the +1 attack. Going to pick up 1 card. His hand is a little bit awkward. You know, the double infestation could put him in a little bit of a rough spot. Here's the Cobalt Scalebane Tom wished he had a couple of turns ago. And now, yeah, he doesn't have necessarily great trades here into the big board that Doc has built.
Well, he does have the full trade if he Bone Mares, let's say, the Flame Elemental and overtrades with the 3/3, and then he has a couple of 3.
Right, he has trades, but he doesn't want to be traded. He wants to be pushing damage.
It's true.
The onus is on Doc to end this game because, or rather on Tom to end the game, because Doc is the one who has a handful of 10-cost spells. if Doc gets a lot of time to continue deploying these without taking too much damage, oh, that is a huge draw for Doc here. The Rat able to take out the buffed Flame Elemental. Hero Power able to take down the SI Agent as well. That has put Doc in a very solid position getting into the 10-minute turns that he's going to have very shortly.
Right.
With a pretty sizable amount of health to work with.
And no second minion play here available for Tom. Quarter Creeper is very expensive. Also, you know, you gotta want to get the damage, but Fandral has some implications too if you leave it up.
Fandral Coon.
Yeah.
Fandral
10
Coon
life.
Infestation it would be outrageously powerful this next turn. Yeah, and Tom recognizes Doc is one of the few players who still has Coon in his Jade Druid deck here, but it would have been incredibly strong if it had not been removed here. But even still, we're going to see a 7/7 into a 5/5, into draw 5, into gain 5 armor, into dance 5 jigs. Did I miss anything?
Yeah, I mean, you pretty much covered it all. What can't this card do? Easiest 5-star of Trump's life. Okay, backstab. Lets him activate the Vile Spine for cheap, and that lets him play a Quarter Creeper. Doesn't get, I mean, he would have to give the Scale Bane for a full clear, but I think at that point he might be just giving up too much because Druid has resources that Rogue does not.
Yeah, and I feel like you need the attack buff from the Scale Bane here too.
Right.
I feel like you need to be putting enough pressure on your opponent so that they can't just sit back and use all the cards that they drew here. Looks like Tom doesn't want to use the backstab here though. He wants to just clear this. And yeah, this is really slipping away from Tom now.
It's pretty much on Elven Minstrel as the only way he can get out of this spot here. DocPwn just has too much resources. Look at the draw differential. Yeah. DocPwn's drawn twice as much as Tom.
Now, just a lot of options available to Doc. He has the Jade Idol, Jade Behemoth, Furion.
Right. Just almost doesn't really matter as long as he sets up some kind of defense and makes sure Rogue can't come back. What is one way they could lose? Perhaps if he gets careless and lets another Bone Mirror drop where the Lich King goes unanswered.
I was going to say Lich King is probably the scariest thing that could come down for Tom here. I mean, I could even see Doc just Malfurion and getting poisonous spiders because those would leave Tom in a position where he needs to deal with those. A big buff, another Bone Mirror wouldn't be that scary.
Yeah, plus his Jades are very reasonable, right? So he just summons a 4/4 Jade. It's like, that's pretty powerful as well.
Yeah, poisonous spiders it is. Armoring up, it's up to 33 here.
Okay, can magic happen again?
What's in the box, Swashbuckler? Stole a Keeper of the Grove. Okay.
That's just down the poisonous spiders.
Yeah, that plus the backstab does take care of the spiders.
Hey. Kind of like the SI7 effect, just to be able to clear the board. Tom going to take a value trade and try to squeeze out as much value, but now he's shut off from any combo draw, which means it's going to be his big heavy hitters. It's no longer the Elven Minstrel top deck he's hoping for.
And now DocPwn can just either Spreading Plague or Jade Behemoth plus swipe here.
Devastating.
And this clears off pretty much everything, leaving just that Keeper of the Grove.
Yeah, Tom needs back-to-back big draws here. Looking at Bone Mirror or Lich King.
Lich King. All right. That is something. And that was the best draw in Tom's deck.
And I'm thinking he's got to come up huge here with Frostmourne or something else equivalent. I think that's probably the only card here that can really bail him out. I like that Tom's hesitated to at least think about whether or not any attacks here are worth it.
Death Grip. All right, that's not really super impactful.
It might steal, you know, a Jade Spirit or Aya's, I guess, nice.
I think the only minions left in the deck is the Behemoth and the Arcane Tyrants are remaining for DocPwn.
You are correct. That is the only minions left. So yeah, it's not even that significant.
DocPwn has, I mean, he could use his Ultimate Infestation and send some Scarabs in to kill the Lich King. He will burn cards if he does that. And I believe he has one Jade Idol left in his deck, so he would be in a sort of awkward position if he didn't draw it.
Right.
If he did burn it, that maybe there's some world in which he actually gets fatigued out. Though that's still pretty unlikely given that he has multiple Jade generators in his hand. Looks like he's just going to go wide on the board.
Yeah, I mean, Jade Blossom just summoning a 6/6 is good enough. Oh man,
All right.
back big draws here for Tom. Was it too little too late? Might as well Death Grip.
What you got? Does take the Behemoth.
I think that's the better one.
It is, certainly.
Yeah.
And not only because it's somewhat more impactful for Tom himself, but it does potentially deny that from DocPwn in terms of having access to additional taunts. Doom Pact? Well, if DocPwn did somehow burn his Jade Idol,
Right.
that would potentially be able to win the game.
Well, I don't think that is possible because he has three Arcane Tyrants.
But right now he cannot burn his Jade Idol.
Right.
Because of those Arcane Tyrants, the fact that his hand is not going to overdraw, yeah, he's just
Right.
going to draw the rest of his deck.
Yes.
He will fatigue for some damage, but dropping those Arcane Tyrants here means that he can just clear the board, have a huge board himself, and go into Jade Idol Recursion with his Nourishes next turn.
Yes. However, there is an instance where Doc could overextend because he does need to shuffle the Jade Idol. So if he's not able, oh man, I mean, if he's not able to actually set up any kind of board presence. Oh, he has the Jade Behemoth though, so he can actually summon 2 Jades with the Behemoth itself. So I think he's still good.
I mean, Doc could just idle here. Idle Hero Power, Spellstone, kill your guy. Clears the board, makes a 7/7 and a 3/6 taunt.
Yeah.
Even getting his entire board wiped is not going to be enough here. Yeah, upgrades to a 6 damage Spellstone, clears off that Scalebane, and even with Doom Pact clearing off that board, Tom is once again in a world of hurt. Yep.
Not going to be enough there, and DocPwn takes the first game. He's on a rampage.
Yeah, winning games that on paper are
True when it comes to Hearthstone, powerhouses. People look at Ukraine or just the CIS region in general. There's been fantastic players, of course, the USA and even Sweden, a couple of the generally really strong countries. But Canada's also fielded some very powerful players, even getting to the finals with Hot Form back in 2015.
Yeah, Hot Form in 2015, Sidonia last year, now DocPwn.
And Purple.
Yeah, and
Twice.
Purple as well. Two-time representative of Canada at the World Championships. So a lot of players who are able to make it out and do well for the Maple Leaf.
That's right. And looks like he's going to continue that streak going into Priest versus Rogue. Things are looking good. And the big thing is whether or not you can win those unfavorable matchups. DocPwn able to get a huge win with the Druid over the Rogue. Now looks to try to shut down Rogue again. Thinking about over his mulligans with some of these early game cards. Even though it's tempting to look at this early low curve here, Kibler, what cards are we actually looking to keep?
I think that with the Dragon version in particular, you're mostly looking to defend yourself against the early aggression. I think the low curve is fairly attractive here. Specifically, Duskbreaker or Netherspite Historian trying to find Duskbreaker gives you so much protection against the early game from the Rogue. And we see that Netherspite Historian is a card that DocPwn picks up immediately after the mulligan, despite keeping so much of his hand.
Yeah, and in the meantime, Tom picks up the patches, of course, and that's definitely not what he wants to see, but we have a lot of game left. You know, I've seen Rogue recover from it when they're able to play a slower game. Like, interestingly enough, like, because it's a slower game, it allows them to have bigger swings with more higher value cards, as long as their opponents don't pressure them too much.
One of the big problems with Tom's hand is that so many of the cards in his hand care a lot about early game pressure. The Quarter Creeper really wants early game minions to trade. The Cobalt Scalebane really wants to have minions alongside it in order to have something to buff. Leroy Jenkins really wants you to have minions who have gotten their damage in so that the burst from Leroy is really relevant. So all of these make the fact that Tom is missing that early game pressure sort of compound in terms of the impact of that poor draw.
Meanwhile, Doc picks up another late game dragon there, and while it might not seem too imposing, Sleepy Dragon is, you know, definitely a card that if you're ignoring and you're not even accounting for it, can add a huge roadblock if like you don't have the Vile Spine Slayer. I've ran into a couple Sleepy Dragons randomly on ladder, and it's provided quite the nuisance to me before.
I was hoping he'd take Temperus there, just because
he can.
It's such a great highlight reel card.
Yeah,
but
if he's a man of the people, he would take Temperus. But if he's a man that wants to guarantee double up on money and a spot in the quarterfinals, I'm taking Sleepy Dragon every time.
I think a big taunt is probably better than a chance to just die instantly. A Bone Mare picked up for Tom here, and this is really not what he's looking for. You know, he has a fistful of the high end of his deck. So many of the most expensive cards in this deck. And just going to dagger the face once again. This is absolutely not the position the Rogue wants to be in.
Yeah, this is looking more like the old Miracle Rogue days where you had nothing to play for a long time and try to go for big power swings on the board.
And now Tom even picks up the Shadow Word Death, which gives him an answer to a Scalebane that could come down next turn.
That's right. Swashbuckler. Could toss that in there as well.
Yeah, absolutely. More resource generation, just an additional minion that Tom may have to deal with. Finds Zero, which is even more resource generation. It's just a lot of what this Priest deck wants to do.
Scalebane, of course, supposed to get provide a roadblock for DocPwn, but the Shadow Word Death, as you mentioned, very useful in this spot. And the longer the game goes, just, you know, should favor Doc, as he has a lot of powerful late game. But I mean, I look at the hand of Tom, and it's like that's not that shabby of a hand to have if you start entering the mid stage of the game relatively unscathed.
It's true, though he is under pressure now. When the Priest is able to get significant pressure on the Rogue, especially with a board that is distributed across multiple minions, that could be tough for the Rogue to come back from, because every amount of damage that you get in on the Rogue is less damage you need to eventually burn them down with. And also the Rogue just doesn't answer wide boards very well. They're great at dealing with individual big minions, but not so good at dealing with a board of 4 minions spread across like this.
Tom has an opportunity to use Vile Spine Slayer here and shut down the card draw source from the Acolyte of Pain.
The South Sea Deckhand is actually a particularly nice draw here, because it does mean that Tom can take out the Radiant if he does use the Vile Spine as well. And the Radiant plus Lyra is potentially really scary. You know, I was actually going to mention that I think DocPwn's choice to play the Radiant there was one that I liked, because it does put a lot of pressure on Tom. He's going to go ahead and just leave up the Acolyte, though, and that I think is not really a big issue for Tom right now, simply because he has no small minions. He just has this handful of big minions.
That's true. If he does have a small minion, it's most likely going to be put out there only for combo purposes.
Go for a 1-cost potion. Deal 3 damage is fantastic. +2 health is really nice on this wide board here.
Yeah. That works really nicely.
He can actually give... Yeah, he can't quite have any of his small minions survive with +2 health attacking into the Cobalt Scalebane here. But I imagine we'll see the non-Acolyte minions get themselves killed and leave up a 1/5 Acolyte here for Doc to try and draw more cards.
Well, I mean, if you didn't want to Vile Spine before, it's very tempting now to Vile Spine a 1-5 Acolyte Pain, deny the draw from your opponent. But now, how do you get past the huge dragons that are coming up soon?
You do still have Bone Mare. You know, a coin Primordial Drake here attacking into the Corridor Creeper removes pretty much the entire board, just leaves the Vile Spine Slayer that cannot get through the 8 health of the Drake. It's also just a Potion of Madness,
right?
That can do very similar impact on this board, though obviously not leave the big body behind.
I like this, using the coin to see what he draws first. Picks up Potion of Madness, and he also has maybe some ways to pick up really powerful cards like Shadow or Pain. Interesting, leading up the Corridor Creeper. Yes, Doc really values the power of his board.
All right, Psychic Scream there's actually pretty huge because it means that even if Tom is able to assemble a big board, like, for instance, Patches plus Bone Mare allows him to clear off everything and keep the minions up, but Psychic Scream just answers that. Yeah, it's gotta kill the Lyra, of course, and then does go face here. I think that the decision to trade specifically with the Patches is respect for the threat of silence.
Right. And also just because the threat of Lyra.
Right.
Being able to...
well, specifically trading with the Patches rather than the
oh, okay. I thought you were comparing whether or not go face.
We can see Mind Control into Mind Control.
That's right. It's like a spiteful summoner here. Tom's kind of floundering here. DocPwn's got plenty of options.
And he still has that Sleepy Dragon.
Right.
Couldn't deal with the 4-8. Can you deal with the 4-12?
And then if it gets Mind Control, just Mind Controls it back.
Yeah.
I mean, I think Doc's got everything he needs. I mean, Tom, once again, will have to hope that he has Lich King or another Bone Mirror to bail him out. Even then, it's probably not enough. There's just so many resources here for Priest.
Doc's really got everything he needs there. There wasn't the early game from Tom to really pressure him nearly enough. And getting to these late stages, just the cards in the Priest deck are so much more powerful than all the cards in the Rogue deck that even this Mind Control that he got off of the Swashbuckler just does not feel like it's going to be enough.
So add insult to injury, he's got even more removal picked up here from Zeril Poison Mind. This has been complete domination over the rest of his group so far. DocPwn is crushing Tom.
Leroy Shadow Step looks good, except when you realize, your opponent still has a way bigger board than you and way more life.
Yeah, I mean, if Doc was at 13, I mean, that is the lethal he needs right now, but it's just too far away. You get enough board presence early on, you kind of mentioned that. And that's usually what you're looking for at this stage. Rogue can probably get over the edge just barely if they're able to, get some momentum and tempo. Mind Control.
Decides he has to take the Priest of the Feast, can't allow the additional life gain here. And Doc could just take it back if he wants. That's my Priest. I want funnel cakes, not you.
Not really necessary, but we'll see what Doc chooses at this point. I don't think there's really much he can do wrong. I guess you are, concerned about a couple of cards in your back of your mind. The Lich King, second Bone Mare, so you got to set up for those scenarios. But he's got removal in the form of second screen, and he's got Mind Control in case like the Lich King just drops down.
Yeah, there's still a Vile Spine Slayer, so just playing one big taunt with your entire turn doesn't necessarily feel like the best option necessarily.
Right.
But DocPwn is still at a very safe life total. He's at 24. Even a Leroy Shadow Step, doesn't represent lethal damage by any means. So he just goes wide on his board and tries to put the pressure on Tom.
Let's see, so if Tom Leroy's and Shadow Step's back, he still has the opportunity to draw Bone Mirror, and that would be an extra 10 damage for the following turn. 11 with the dagger.
Many options.
And he's able to do 10 damage this turn. Huh, that's still pretty scary, but pretty far off still, because Priest can heal itself.
Interestingly, the Priest of the Feast is pretty good for Tom because he's gaining life now off of these spells too. So he's getting himself out of the potential threat range from DocPwn.
Right. Tom's not even trying to go for any desperation play. Knows that he's far out of the range, so he's just going to clear the board. That means that DocPwn can drop any of his big bad boys here.
Can't quite kill the Priest of the Feast and play the Sleepy Dragon.
Is someone injured?
Yeah, this is all but just a formality at this point.
Border Creeper, really impressive most of the time, but not facing these gigantic dragons that DocPwn has on the board.
Right, and a lot of this is just due diligence, you know? There's a case for Tom if he's able to pick up one of his insanely powerful late game cards, but that won't matter. 2-0 for DocPwn as Priest takes down the Rogue.
That is a matchup we've seen go both ways so far over the course of this event. But
And he's going to turn to his Druid to try and get the upset over DocPwn's Tempo Rogue. But DocPwn's got, oh man, he's got the Prince Keleseth and the Shadow Step. That is the Stone Cold Nuts.
that is a really, really strong draw already from DocPwn. Quarter Creep to go with it, and a South Sea Captain. So, that is...
Wow.
If you were to construct a hand,
Yeah.
if you were allowed to pick the 4 cards in your opening hand as a Tempo Rogue against Jade Druid, that might be the 4-card opening hand you pick.
Yeah, we have a big DocPwn fan, or maybe a Prince Keleseth fan in the audience as he cheered really loudly off of the South Sea Captain and Prince Keleseth synergy there. That is quite the fearsome start. Tom's got not a bad opening himself. He's got double Wild Growth, which he keeps to try and ramp into powerful things. Or perhaps into more ramp. What?
All the mana in the world and nothing to do with it.
Yeah. It's cool if you have 10 mana crystals, but you still have to answer, you know, a wall of early game tempo. Now, here's the thing, though. DocPwn can continue to come up empty. You know, we have seen Shadow Steps on Keleseth early on, but then Rogue draws things like Backstab or very late game minions that they can't play for 3 turns, 4 turns, and then end up whiffing for a while, giving their opponents a chance to come back.
And that does make the Backstab draw immediately for DocPwn here actually pretty good for him.
Right.
Because it means that he has fewer air cards that he can draw in the next couple of draws here. I think he's debating whether he actually wants to coin out Keleseth here, which I think is a little bit unusual, particularly given the fact that he has no other 2 to follow it up with, or even double 1 or anything to follow it up with.
Right.
If, for instance, he had a pirate in his hand, you know, coining out Keleseth, or a pirate and a Firefly. Maybe he wants to coin out Keleseth and then Shadow Step it and get going. And speaking of ramp, there's a Nourish for Tom. So if he wants to ramp even more, he has that option.
Oh my gosh.
Okay, well.
So now DocPwn has to only dodge the 1 in 24 patches draw, and he will be it'll be smooth sailing.
Jade Blossom, Jade Idol here does give Tom a pretty reasonable board. Ramps him quite a bit. DocPwn does not draw patches. Whew. That's a 10-10 Lich King. And that's going to be a very large patches.
Yeah, patches is a 4-4. And if I'm DocPwn, I'm even thinking about tossing in the Backstab as well, so I can use my pressure to go face and keep my board presence as high as possible. But I am going into 6 mana, which is something you want to consider as well. Trading off the Keleseth isn't exactly a bad idea if you're trying to play around Spreading Plague, but at the same time, I kind of want to just pressure my opponent.
Looks like he is going to max the pressure here. Backstab takes down the 2-2, and
yeah, I mean, would you even bother killing the 1/1? Sometimes even hitting, like, it looks like the 1/1 will get the trade no matter what. And Doc's thinking about it too, you know, not autopiloting. You want to think about every single interaction here.
Well, this could be Jade Blossom, Jade Idol, and a Wild Growth from Tom.
But he's ramping his mana and his Jade. It's like turn 4 and he's got a 4/4 Jade on 8 mana crystals the following.
Yeah, I mean, of the draws to compete with double Shadow or double Keleseth plus captains, this is potentially one of them. You know, he has Nourish to draw next turn with 4 mana left over to potentially play a swipe or something similar. He could potentially swipe, or I guess he can't branching paths and use the Spellstone.
Yeah, well, I mean, DocPwn's ramping his Pirates. He's at a 5-drive patches right now.
Bigger than Jade's.
Yeah. Quarter Creeper can actually be coined out. I think 2 minions would be reduced, so you can coin it. But I guess there's power in being able to not only push damage, but save the coin from the Lich King.
Well, Nourish will pick up 3 cards.
Swipe here would be
Really
massive.
wants a swipe. Oh, the swipe clears the board with the trade, and Infestation is online next turn.
Yes, and DocPwn got a little greedy by not playing the Quarter Creeper. But that is quite the reload.
Yeah. Well,
Backstab's a bad draw for DocPwn too.
That's one of those air.
Yeah, it doesn't
air
actually
cards.
have substance next turn.
Spellstone gets upgraded.
my
Skyrim
goodness.
comes down. Don't write Tom off just yet.
Not at all. And DocPwn's best play here is a Swashbuckler. He's going to hope for substance.
I mean, you can Wild Growth out that Lich King.
And
Hold
keep the
on to your
coin.
coin.
I mean, keeping the coin might have some value too.
It could. Coin is actually quite a valuable card to enable combos quite easily.
Right.
In particular, if you pick up an Elven Minstrel, it allows you to coin out the Minstrel and have more mana to play the follow-up minions you draw.
Yes.
I wonder.
And it's so much so that we've seen some Temple Rogue squeezing counterfeit coin in through the current versions of builds. It kind of made its way a little bit in at the end of last year, before the expansion, but some rogues really love it.
Man, that Arcane Tyrant was a pretty big draw off that Infestation as well, giving Tom a board that can really just deal with DocPwn now.
And I guess all that ramp paid off because Tom was able to land the ultimate Infestation, like you're mentioning. Now has a lot of tools at his disposal this turn. I mean, he's got a full board clear, guaranteed. The Oaken Summon, will it still pull anything? Has it
Oaken
played
Summon
Fandral?
still hits Fandral, yes.
Okay.
Levels up that Spellstone. Spellstone into swipe.
Yeah.
Cleared the board at 9 to face. Tom has absolutely turned this game around.
What happened? It was supposed to be a 3-0, double Keleseth buffs with a Shadow Step, and double Southsea Captain on curve. And all of a sudden, things have slipped away. DocPwn with a couple of weak turns there. You know, he's talked about how you need to hit something of substance. Playing a Swashbuckler into Wild Growth, that's not what you want. This Lich King is great and all, but is it too little too late?
It just might be.
Well, let's hold on and see what's behind the Lich King door. I've seen some crazy comebacks because of this card.
Oh, yeah. Army of the Dead. That counts the buffs on your minions with from Keleseth.
Is it a time that we use Branching Paths for a plus attack here?
I think you might want to. You might want to Branching Paths, Jade Behemoth into Branching Paths to kill the Lich King here and push damage.
Draw first, but I guess I don't know
Get
if
more
it
information.
changes much.
No, I don't think there's a card you draw that changes that.
Right, because he has a second Arcane Tyrant. And also he couldn't even play because it was a 4-mana spell. But good technical sequencing.
There's just lethal in play for Tom, even through the Army of the Dead. It has to hit a taunt minion, I think.
Right.
DocPwn does have Serenite Chain Gang he can hit off of this, which would keep him alive.
Right.
There's a Chain Gang. That is a big board.
What?
This game is crazy. Talk about swings.
Oh. That is disgusting.
I mean, this even represents counter-lethal.
Yeah.
There once was a
I said that the Lich King was good at
5
comebacks.
minions, one of which was a taunt, which he absolutely needed a charge minion.
Right, double charge minions. But I mean, Tom has ways to stall as well.
That Oaken Summons has no more targets. Look at DocPwn just face in his hands. This game is really going back and forth.
So let's see. There's 19. Like, we're assuming Tom's gonna kill this 4/5. There's 19 damage in the minions plus the dagger, so 20, and he's at 23. So the Bone Marrow would do it, even if Tom played no defense. But he can play Ironwood Golem, and he can develop Aya. Aya is so powerful. I think his Jades are at 5/5 or 6/6 now.
Golems are a girl's best friend.
So this is still kind of pushing that lethal boundary here. Back over to DocPwn. This is so much board tension. Tom's sitting back.
Yeah, the Chain Gang into Vile Spine does not push enough damage to actually end the game. Does give DocPwn the ability to clear off some of these minions, which again represent a potential counter lethal.
Right.
The Chain Gang itself does a lot of defense here. Double buff Chain Gang, 2 4/5 taunts. It's a lot to fight through.
Right, and I guess Swipe's been used, right? So you still have to be cognizant of it, but at the same time, how do you push the damage? Do you trade into anything here?
Man, I think the Vile Spine in the 6/6 takes off enough damage with the 2 taunt minions to allow you to attack into the Ironwood Golem and then just push damage to try to just have lethal next turn.
And I mean, it's more than try. I think he will.
But there's
be able to
spreading
push.
play now.
Well, I mean, the spreading play doesn't really do anything. It's just a band-aid on a gaping wound.
It's true.
Doc gets the last little bit of damage. What can Tom draw on this spot? So Tom goes with the 20, and there's, if he removes, okay, he's just gonna go for the spreading play. Just gonna set up all of his defenses as much as possible here.
Yep. A lot of taunts. 7/7 Jade Golem. Leroy does not represent lethal here. Can only fight through 4, 5. Yeah, can't. None of these minions individually represents lethal damage here. He can play Leroy, which gives Tom no whelps right now.
Right. And, you know, a lot of people say if you have an opportunity in late game to do this, Leroy doesn't really get much better. But does he want to supplant his board with Bone Mirror as well? I mean, Leroy's 8 damage.
Yeah, Leroy and Vile Spine here just is so strong. Further building out his board.
All Scarabs are going to go down.
And just so many minions. This army of the dead for DocPwn, in fact, did build him an army. He cycles Wrath, draws Swipe. No, not lethal. Oaken Summons has no more minions that it fetches from Tom's deck. It's just gain 6.
Spreading Plague number 2!
Oh my goodness! That second That second plague will give him enough breathing room.
Are you serious?
But does he have enough weight? Does he have enough damage to get past DocPwn's Bone Bear? Because the Bone Bear's gonna lock things too. This is so tense. Tom is putting his head in his hands.
There's 14 damage that Doc can push right now. If he Bone Mares his Leroy, attacks the other 4 minions, he cannot deal lethal damage to Tom.
Yeah, if there was any way to squeeze in a little bit more damage. Was there ever a time where he's able to get one extra hit to the face? Maybe the hero power instead of wild growth mid-game, but then at the same time, would he have been able to hit his ramp as easily? Full clear.
One damage off lethal. Tom has Infestation, does 5. DocPwn is at 6.
That's not enough. Tom shoots the face, but he knows what that means. He's out of options. DocPwn dominates Group A and